So for the last couple things in this section, we're going to look at quadrantal angles. And the effect that a quadrant has on the other trig functions, okay? So one of the things that we want to look at is what on God's green earth is a quadrantal angle. So you'll notice from your unit circle, so let's zoom out just a little bit here, okay? Everything in this open area here, and in this open area here, and in this open area here, and in this open area here, all of those have valid trig functions or ratios for all 6 trig functions. The quadrantal angles are the ones that are not free-floating in quadrant 1, 2, 3, or 4. They're on the axis. So 0 is a quadrantal angle. 90 degrees or pi over 2 is a quadrantal angle because it's lying on the y-axis. Pi or 180 is a quadrantal angle because it's lying on the x-axis. And then 3 pi over 2 or 270 is a quadrantal angle because it's lying on the y-axis. And then 362 pi, quadrantal, lying on the x-axis. So again, and that goes on and on and on for all eternity. So I could say 4 pi's or 720. That's a quadrantal angle because it is a coterminal with this angle right here. So it lies at the same spot. Now what you're going to find out is that all of a sudden we've got some weird stuff going on with the quadrantal angles. And you're going to find out that your answers for your ratios are either 1 or 0 or -1 or undefined. Okay? There's all those weird ratios within the quadrants, but on the quadrantal angles, you're going to find out that your answers for ratios are either going to be 1, 0, -1, or undefined. So if we look, remember that your x-coordinate also refers to cosine. Okay, so I can say that the cosine of 0, which is a quadrantal angle, is 0. Okay, so cosine, I just said that wrong, cosine of 0 is 1. Okay, I said 0, I meant 1. Cosine of 0 is 1, because that's your x-coordinate at 1. Now, another thing that I can do, hang on, this is sending me a message. I don't know what's happening. Okay, so another thing I can do is say, all right, well, fine. I know what the reciprocal of that is. So the secant of 0 is also going to be 1, because 1 over 1 is 1. All right, so let's do the sine. I've got the sine of 0 is 0. Why? Because that's the y-coordinate at 0. And now look at this horrible thing that happens. If you divide by 0, so remember I can put 0 over any number. If you divide by 0, it's undefined. Okay? So the cosecant at 0 is undefined. Okay? The cosecant at 0 is undefined. My calculator's in the way. That says undefined. All right, so finally, what do we have for tangent and cotangent? Well, tangent is the ratio of y to x. So y is 0 to x is 1. So tangent is 0. But then when you try and do the reciprocal of 0, you're going to find out that you're dividing by 0, which is undefined. So that is the purpose of learning about quadrantal angles, is that you're going to find out that your answers are 1, 0, or -1 or undefined. Okay, and it just depends on where you land. So for instance, if I ask you about the sine of 3 pi over 2. So the sine of 3 pi over 2 is actually -1. You can't see what I'm writing. Is actually -1, which means the cosecant is also -1. But cosine will be 0, so secant will be undefined. Okay, so that's the purpose of learning specifically about quadrantal angles. Well, now we're going to look at the effect that a quadrant has on different trig functions. So if I consider, for instance, if I tell you just randomly that the sine of theta is greater than 0, and if the cosine of theta is less than, less than 0. Okay, so remember that sine refers to y values, and this is just a really weird way of saying positive. Okay, so what kind of numbers are bigger than 0? Positive numbers. What kind of numbers are less than 0? Negative numbers. So I know that this is effectively saying that all my y's are positive. So if you think about a coordinate plane, all your y's are positive up here, okay, above the x-axis. Well, this says cosine is negative. So my x's are negative. Well, all of my x's are going to be negative over here. So where's the overlap? Your overlap is in quadrant 2, and then I can slap a circle on there, and I notice that if this is true, I must be operating in quadrant 2. So let's give you another example like that. Let's do, hang on, let me find something pretty. Let's do, okay, the sine. So let's like really put some meaning into this. I've got the sine of theta is going to be negative 24 over 25. So your y values must be negative. So I must be under the x-axis. That right now tells me that what I'm focusing on is something under the x-axis because my y's generated a negative ratio. Okay, so what if I tell you as well that theta is between 180 and 270? Well, that just narrowed it down. I'm in quadrant 3. I'm in quadrant 3. So what I want to do is I want to find the other 5 trig functions. So I'm going to line these up as sine theta, cosine theta, tangent theta, cosecant theta, secant theta, and cotangent theta. So what I end up with is, first of all, I've got 2 sides because this is a ratio. I've got 2 sides of a right triangle. So here's how I draw these things. Okay, this is the origin. I drop my radius into whichever quadrant I'm thinking about. So if this is the origin, my radius or my hypotenuse must be going down into the left, and so that I can get into quadrant 3. And then I just move over, and so in order to get over there, I must go left and down. Okay, so this is going to be theta. It's coming off the origin. I know that the sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so I've got opposite, which is negative 24, and hypotenuse, which is 25. And if I do Pythagorean Theorem to that, okay, so I'm trying to find out what x is. Pythagorean Theorem says x squared plus y squared is, r squared. I started to answer it. Okay, so y squared, 24 squared, or negative 24 times negative 24 is 576. R squared is 625, because your radius will always be your denominator. And then when I subtract those, I find out that x squared is 49, which means x must be either positive 7 or negative 7. And that's where the effect of the quadrant comes in. I'm in quadrant 3. I move to the left from the origin. So x must be negative 7. And now I can find my other 6 trig functions. So I was told that sine is negative 24 over 25. I was told that cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So that's negative 7 over 25. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So in negative 24 over negative 7 is positive 24/7. Cosecant is the reciprocal. So I get negative 25 over 24. Secant is the reciprocal, so negative 25 over 7, and then 7/24. So that is how you are going to operate the importance of knowing which quadrant you are in, because it'll have an effect on the positive negatives that you're working with. So that is it for 7.4, and I'll see you for 7.5.